Okay, fine, I'll do it. XM6 versus AirPods Max. You asked for it, and I think it's a foregone conclusion, but let's do it anyway. When I reviewed the Sony XM6 a couple of weeks ago, I asked you guys to give me recommendations for comparisons. The most popular was the Bowers & Wilkins PX7S3s, unsurprisingly. I have done that video, we'll link to that video at the end of this one. The second most popular request was the AirPods Max, for some reason. I have no idea why, but you guys want to see me compare these against these, which I'll get to in a second. We are working on some others, so for instance, the Bose Quiet Comfort Ultras, the Sennheiser Momentum 4s, and maybe some more. Get involved in the comments, tell me what you want to see, and hit subscribe not to miss those future videos. But today, it's all about Sony versus Apple. Before we get there, although this video isn't sponsored, we do have some fantastic brand partners who help me keep the lights on in this studio. One of those brand partners is Brain FM, and Brain FM is basically an app that pipes music into your head, which can make you more productive. It's not guaranteed, but what I can say is that for the last nearly 4 years, I've been using Brain FM every single day to get work done, and I cannot do without it. And the best news is, guys, we have a fantastic deal for you. So click that link in the description to find out more. If you think this is a foregone conclusion, you might be right, to be honest, but equally you may not be right, because I will be doing a off-the-cuff audio test between these two in this video, so you can see my live reaction to which one sounds better. But there's lots more to consider, so let's start with the pricing, and well, the Sony wins immediately because they are $399 in the UK and $449 in the US, which is still very expensive. However, the AirPods Max, which came out in 2020, 5 years ago, are still 499 quid in the UK and $549 in the US. So they're much more expensive. A good 100 quid, $100 more expensive than these. In terms of spec differences, the AirPods Max are much heavier, 386 grams versus 254 grams. Bluetooth codecs, Sony wins there massively because they have support for LDAC, AAC, SBC, LC3, whereas the AirPods Max have support for AAC, and that's pretty much it. Battery life, Sony wins again, so it has 30 hours versus 20 hours on the AirPods Max. Charging, Apple offers 1.5 hours of playback from a 5-minute charge, whereas on the Sonys you can get about 3 hours from a 3-minute charge. One other massive difference actually, where the AirPods Max arguably win if you are an iPhone user, is that they have access to the entire Apple ecosystem. So they link up with all of your devices and they do all that automatic switching, and they have Dolby Atmos and spatial audio and some other bits and pieces and Siri built into them. You don't get that on these because they are Sony and they have to work across both Android and iOS, and Apple doesn't give all of that ecosystem stuff to other headphone manufacturers. So immediately, if you need a pair of headphones that are deeply integrated into your Apple ecosystem, you need to get the AirPods Max or the AirPods Pro, or just the AirPods Pro 2. However, there's much more to this. Let's start with design, and beauty is definitely in the eye of the beholder. So let me know in the comments which one. That's annoying. These don't do that, by the way. One of the biggest problems with AirPods Max, which very few people talk about, is the fact that they're constantly bashing each other, both of the ear cups. It's just really annoying. You don't get that on these. Anyway, back to the design. So annoying. Let me know in the comments which of the designs you prefer. For me, the AirPods Max just swing it because I'm bald, basically. I don't have any hair. And the reason for that, the reason I'm bald has nothing to do with this. The fact I don't have any hair means that headphones which sit closer to my head, I just think look a bit better on my head because I don't have hair to fill out here. The XM6 are just a bit bulkier. They just kind of stick out a little bit more. It's not the end of the world, but it's worth bearing in mind. But yeah, in terms of the design, these look contemporary. I said this in the comparison with the PX7S3s, and it didn't go down that well with certain members of my audience, but they're simple. There's no big kind of design flourishes or big logos and things. The AirPods Max, to be fair, are pretty much the same. So I think they're very similar in terms of looking modern. It's just whether or not you prefer the look of these over these. One thing I will say about the design is that the black version of the XM6 do smudge pretty badly, as you can see there. You don't get that on the AirPods Max. That's why I would go for the white version of these personally. I think the white version is much less susceptible to those smudges. In terms of the AirPods Max build quality, these are the original AirPods. the original AirPods Max, which, as you can see, after about 4 years of use-ish, the canopy has gone very limp. It's kind of lost its rigidity. Whether or not Apple has fixed that with the latest version, I have no idea, but you won't get that with the Sony XM6 because they have a traditional headband, which we know works. While shooting footage of these headphones, I've just realized that I didn't mention the controls. The XM6 have a combination of buttons and touch controls. The touch controls work, and the buttons are fantastic. We have a circular recessed power button that's very easy to find, but the AirPods Max only have physical buttons. We have a rotating crown that you can press as well for play and pause and all that sort of stuff, and just one other button for noise cancelling. So they do win in that respect, but that's not a reason to pick the AirPods Max over the XM6, as you'll find out later. The other point of comparison, as I've just demonstrated, is the case, and there's no competition here whatsoever. This is the AirPods Max case, which isn't a case, it's just like a kind of slip cover, and it doesn't protect them. It's a laughing stock. It smudges and marks horribly. It's just rubbish. The Sony XM6 case is fantastic. I've decided now it's the best headphone case on the market, which is fantastic when you bear in mind that the XM5 case wasn't very good because it was so big. The reason this is so good is for two reasons. Firstly, the headphones do fold properly like that. AirPods Max don't do that, they just do that. So they fold properly, which means you can get a smaller case and they just slot in like that. The second reason this case is so fantastic is because of the magnetic clasp. Closed, no zip, no faffing around, open, closed and locked. And trust me, it doesn't matter. The fact we don't have a zip on these isn't a negative. In fact, it's a massive positive in terms of ease of use. So, design-wise, it very much depends whether you prefer the look of either pair of headphones, but in terms of practicalities, the Sony XM6 wins massively. Comfort. This is very straightforward. The AirPods Max are very comfortable, they always have been, but they're very heavy, and lots of people have issues with them falling forwards or falling backwards. You know, if you do a lot of head banging, or if you just kind of lean forwards and do your work, or if you just kind of lean back and do your relaxing, they move on your head. The XM6 don't. The XM6 are so light. It's one of the best things about the design. It just means that you can wear them for much longer periods of time, and you can headbang, you can lean back, you can lean forward. The only other thing to bear in mind is that the XM6 have a little protrusion inside the ear cup, which is to do with the noise cancelling. Doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't touch my ear. It's just worth bearing in mind. You don't get that on the AirPods Max, but overall, in terms of comfort, these absolutely smash these. When it comes to testing the audio between two pairs of headphones, I do normally do it before I shoot this video, obviously, but I haven't had time to do that, to be completely honest. So I thought let's have a bit of fun and do a live reaction to the way these two headphones sound. Now, I'm doing this via the iPhone 16e and Apple Music, which means they're both being fed AAC music, which puts them on level terms, really. I think it's a fair test that way. However, there's no doubting the fact that the AirPods Max have a little bit of a leg up there because this is the Apple ecosystem. Whether or not that will have a difference on the sound, I don't know. Let's get into it, and while I'm doing this, we'll have to speed up the footage, kind of, you know, Benny Hill style, and put some incidental funny music over the top of it, but here we go. Interesting. This is the thing. So this isn't an audiophile channel. These aren't audiophile headphones. I'm not going to go into every frequency response and, you know, all that stuff because I don't care. I just want to know, do they sound great out of the box? And the XM6 sound fantastic out of the box. Much better than the XM5, much better than the XM4. Not as good as the PX7S3s, but they are top tier in terms of audio. However, when you compare these against the AirPods Max, they both sound pretty good. The big difference that I can immediately tell when I go between the two of them is the roundness, the fullness of the sound from the XM6. They just sound bigger, a bit tighter, a bit more controlled. Just a bit of it's a newer sound, if that makes sense. It feels like that, you know, these have been worked on through different generations, you know, from the XM4 to the XM5 to the XM6. Sony has learnt from past mistakes when it comes to certain things they've done with the audio, with the XM5s for instance, and they've improved on it. Whereas the AirPods Max is still the same pair of headphones that we had in 2020. There hasn't been another version in between apart from the USB-C update. So we haven't had this kind of iteration of the audio performance. The one thing we have had possibly is, the iPhone has got better with its AAC codec stuff and what have you, but that's pushing it really. If I had to pick a winner, which I do out of these two in terms of audio, it is the XM6 because they do sound a bit better. But they're both pretty good sounding pairs of headphones. In this particular battle, they both sound pretty good, to be fair, but the XM6 are better. Does that make sense? I really hope it makes sense. But yeah, the XM6 are a better sounding pair of headphones. But if you decide to get the AirPods Max, then you won't be disappointed, I don't think. Right, now the big one, the next big one, noise cancelling. This is pretty straightforward. The AirPods Max noise cancelling is still one of the best on the market. But if you want the absolute best on the market, just get the XM6. They are unbeatable in my opinion. The other side of noise cancelling is transparency mode, where you let the outside world in for taking telephone calls and just being aware of your surroundings. The AirPods Max are still the market leaders in that respect. I have no idea why no other headphone manufacturer can beat Apple, or at least match Apple when it comes to transparency. The XM6 are quite close, to be fair. They're much better than the XM5, much better than the XM4, and one of the best on the market in terms of pass-through mode. But for some reason, transparency mode is just it's an Apple thing. They know exactly what they're doing with it, but it's not enough to beat the noise cancelling on these. The other thing that I know that matters to you guys is calling quality. So let's give these two a test.
Okay, starting with the AirPods Max, I'm walking down a street which is relatively quiet. There's a few cars driving past. More importantly, there's a lot of wind noise, which is quite a challenge for these kind of calls. But as always, let me know what you think in the comments about the call quality of the AirPods Max, and let's compare it against the Sony XM6.
And this is the Sony XM6 mic. Again, same street, a few cars driving past, a bit of wind noise, not quite as much as before to be fair, but there's a car driving past now. And let me know what you think in the comments. In the battle between the XM6 and the Bowers & Wilkins PX7 S3s, Sony won big time. The Bowers weren't fantastic, to be honest, but I did have a couple of comments from people saying, I wish you'd done a call test in a quiet room as well. I would be amazed if any modern headphones struggled with a completely quiet room. They just work. I wouldn't worry about that. It's conditions like this where there's a bit of wind, a bit of street noise. Which one's better? Get involved.
It's conclusion time, and if I had to pick one pair of headphones out of these two, it would be the XM6. Obviously, they're cheaper, they've got better audio, they've got better noise cancelling, the best noise cancelling on the market, a much better proper case, they've got better battery life, they're lighter, more comfortable, you can wear them for longer. It's an absolute no-brainer. The only reason you'd go for the AirPods Max is if you're a massive Apple person. So if you need all of the Apple ecosystem stuff and you want the Apple design, then that's the only reason really to go for these. But you'll be spending more money and you're technically buying a pair of headphones that is nearly 5 years old. These are brand new and they just come across as being brand new because they're better. In fact, don't buy the AirPods Max. I'm sorry. We need a new pair of AirPods Max this year or next year at the very latest. If you're looking between these two headphones, whoever you are, just buy the XM6. Over to you now, guys. Get involved in the comments, and two very quick requests. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, but you've been watching this channel for a while, you know where that button is. And secondly, I've launched a new channel. It's about cars. It's called The Next Drive. And if you're into cars, I'd love for you to go and check it out and let me know what you think. The link is down below in the description. See you in the next one or on the next drive.